Okay, Twin Peaks episode 6. Cooper is still at Dougie's work by the statue. The police officer from earlier appears again and tells him to move along. He suspects Cooper is intoxicated or on drugs, one or the other. Cooper is fascinated by the man's badge. The officer leads him away, and he and his colleague take Dougie to his home, or Cooper as Dougie. Janie E. alludes to him again having disorientation as a regular thing beyond Cooper's behavior since he's returned. Before leaving, the officer points out an envelope on their doorstep. And over a sandwich, Janie E. tells Dougie that she's taking him to see Dr. Ben tomorrow for a checkup. She asks about his case files from work and the envelope. She tells Cooper to go and say goodnight to Sonny Jim, who's waiting for him, reading. Sonny Jim asks him to stay with him until he falls asleep, and the two have a laugh using the clapper to turn the nightlight on and off. Janie E. calls him back downstairs to talk about the contents of the envelope from the doorstep. Inside is a message and a photo showing Dougie with Jade. She realizes it's from his creditors and that he never called them. They then promptly get a call from their creditors, which Janie E. answers. The voice tells her that Dougie owes them $50,000. They say they're coming to his office tomorrow to collect, but Janie E. sets up a meeting in a park on the corner of Guinevere and Merlin, which are more Camelot references. She tells Cooper to get to work on his case files right away. When she's gone, Cooper touches the 7 on the Lucky 7 insurance folders. He seems to have kind of a fascination with it. Does that mean something to Cooper? I don't know. I still think it's pretty shitty that Janie E. totally left Dougie at work, even though she apologizes to him and says she forgot about him not having a car. We see a stoplight as it changes from green to yellow to red, and hear electrical noises. And it appears to be the light from Sparkwood and 21 from the original series. Mike is in the red room, wandering around and filling the air like he did before. Cooper, working on the case files, sees Mike in the red room, sort of laid over the floor like he also did earlier. Mike says, Cooper must wake up, and repeats, don't die, several times. And then he fades away. Cooper examines the case files and sees small, star-like points of light in the papers and starts making these strange, childish scribbles on the paper, which appear to be gibberish. Is Cooper important to the survival of the Red Room somehow at this point? If he dies, does that mean that Mr. C gets to go free for good? And could that spell destruction for the Black Lodge? That seems to be a possibility. Are these powers related to Cooper seeing the Red Room icon of the slot machine and the green light on Anthony Sinclair's face? I'm guessing so. His doodles appear to be ladders and stairs and squiggles, but the stairs also resemble the zigzag pattern on the floor of the Red Room. Albert drives and talks to Gordon Cole on the phone. As he walks through the pouring rain and cold, he yells, "Fuck Gene Kelly, you motherfucker," which I thought was pure Albert. Inside a bar called Max Vaughn's Bar, he walks through the crowd until he reaches a woman with short, sort of platinum blonde hair and a stylish bob. He says, "Diane," and the woman visibly reacts with her back turned, and the smoking woman turns around. It's Laura Dern, and says, "Hello, Albert." So we finally meet Diane, whose last name appears to be Evans, according to the credits. Of course, in the original series, Diane was only a name that Cooper directed his taped messages to. I'm guessing he mailed them to her and she transcribed them for the FBI. So this is apparently the woman Albert and Cole mentioned as needing to see Mr. C in prison. And that she would be able to, I guess, tell him from the real Cooper. Does she know Cooper better than anyone else from the tapes? Or did they have some other relationship outside of work? This has to be in Philadelphia or a similar East Coast city. I don't see Diane as being in Buckhorn. So he had to have traveled somewhere to find her. Also, fuck Gene Kelly, you motherfucker. That's the funniest line on the show yet. Back in Twin Peaks, we see a logging operation. Apparently, Richard Horne is meeting Red, the man who Shelley made eyes at in the Bang Bang Bar several episodes back. Two men stand around with machine guns as they and Red watch Richard react to apparently just taking some drugs. Apparently, Red is the source of the drugs coming into Twin Peaks, so I'm guessing that's where the cocaine that Stephen and Becky were taking comes from. Red is dismissive of Richard, calling him a small-time and kid, the latter of which Richard particularly dislikes. Red tells Richard that he can pick up the drugs at Mary Ann's, which indicates to Richard that Red knows the area better than he thought he did. Red is very strange. He makes bizarre karate gestures and really strange small talk, like if Richard has ever studied his hand. Red says he's been around for weeks and that he likes the area. Red stomps really hard on the ground, holding his side, saying he has a problem with his liver. Richard dismisses the town as a pushover and that the sheriff is like 90 years old or something. Red asks if Richard has seen the movie The King and I, and wonders if Richard has things under control and if there's a problem, or that there's a problem. He doesn't know Richard, and he'll be watching him. He tells Richard he'll saw his head open and eat his brain if he funks him over. Red pulls out a dime and flips it, and as Richard watches, the dime floats in the air for an impossibly long time. Then, with a clinking noise, it apparently appears in Richard's mouth, and he pulls it out. Then Red makes a catching gesture and opens his hand to reveal the dime, and Richard checks his own hand, and the dime's gone. He says tails is Richard, and heads is him. Heads I win, tails you lose. Red seemed harmless when he appeared in the Bang Bang Bar a few episodes back. Now we know he appears to be a dangerous guy. I'm guessing that he got to know Twin Peaks to see what kind of people Richard would be selling to. How does Shelley know him? Are they having an affair? Red doesn't seem to be native to Twin Peaks, maybe not even the area, so it's highly doubtful that Red is Becky's father. How did Richard get involved with Red? Red's operations seem well equipped, but how big is it? Does Red always behave this bizarrely with the movements and the random questions and all that, or was he just trying to scare Richard? And what was up with his weird coin trick? It reminded me of something Robert Blake's Mystery Man character might have done in Lost Highway. An emotional Richard drives away, still angry about being called kid. He's petty and childish when it comes to people not behaving the way he wants them to. His potential mother, Audrey Horne, acted the same way early in the original series, but developed into a much better-rounded, more sympathetic person as it progressed. Will Richard have the same emotional journey? Who knows? In the Fat Trout Trailer Park, a man named Mickey, this is the new Fat Trout Trailer Park, by the way, Mickey catches a ride into town with Carl Rodd, who was the manager of the original Fat Trout Trailer Park, which was in Deer Meadow, Oregon. And I'm assuming he's the manager of the new Fat Trout Trailer Park. He lets Mickey catch a ride with him. Carl says it's a beautiful morning. Mickey asks why Carl goes into town at the same time every day, and Carl says it gets him out of the trailer park. Carl wonders how Linda is. Mickey says she's better, and it's taken 6 months to get her an electric wheelchair from the government. Carl blames the fucking war and the fucking government. He smokes and offers one to Mickey, but Mickey almost takes one, but then says, no, I quit a year ago. Carl says he's been smoking for 75 years every fucking day, and they laugh about it. Is this Fat Trout Trailer Park in Twin Peaks? I'm assuming so, since the character of Miriam, who we see shortly, was in the Double R Diner. Got coffee at the Double R Diner. And we see her shortly afterwards in a park nearby where Carl is relaxing. I'm guessing that since Twin Peaks is in the northeast corner of Washington State, very close to the Canadian border, that the original Fat Trout trailer park in Oregon would have been some distance from the town. Is this Linda, the same Linda mentioned by the giant at the start of the series? If so, we now have both Richard and Linda. I theorized then that the two might be related, perhaps even twins, but it appears Linda was a soldier who was injured in the war, if Carl's comment of fucking war is to be believed. If Mickey is her husband and they're about the same age, it seemed like she'd be at least in her 30s, which is too old to be Audrey's daughter. Also, if she was a Horn, it seems unlikely, highly unlikely, that she would go into the army. At the Double R Diner, a woman named Miriam, who I mentioned earlier, chats with Heidi, the German waitress, whom we only saw twice in the original series, in the first and last episodes. She talks about cupcakes and pies, and she's apparently a teacher, talking about all the cute kids she has this year. She gets 2 coffees to go. She tips them, which they say after she leaves that she can't afford to do, and that they should just give her a pie for free sometime. Miriam seems like a regular customer. It was nice to see Heidi again, and she actually has lines this time rather than just spending her whole time on screen giggling. Richard drives away. He calls Red a stupid magic motherfucker, which was a funny line. In town, in the park, Carl sits and smokes, drinks coffee, and enjoys nature. He smiles as he watches a mother and son playing a game of chase by the bench where he sits. Richard drives. He sees the traffic has stopped at a light ahead and blows it off and drives around. The mother and son are waved across the crosswalk by the lead driver in line. Richard drives through and hits the boy, killing him. His mother screams, alerting Carl. Richard yells about it as he drives away, but schoolteacher Miriam sees him behind the wheel as he goes by. Carl comes to see what happened. He sees a fire of some kind rise from the boy's body and disappear into the air, and says, God. He goes over to put his hand on the grieving mother and look into her eyes as bystanders watch and sirens approach. We see a light pole with the number 6 as electricity crackles from its transformer. Is Richard usually this careless, or is it because he's angry and high? I don't see him lasting along with Red if he's always like this. And what was the fire that Carl saw rise from the body? Was it the boy's spirit? He was abducted by Carl, that is, was abducted by mysterious forces as a child, presumably the same ones that later abducted Major Briggs, along with Margaret Lanterman, the Log Lady, and another boy named Alan Traherne. Did it give him supernatural abilities, the same as the Log Lady? This is all mentioned in the Secret History of Twin Peaks by Mark Frost. And I've had a question since then of whether we would ever actually meet Alan Traherne, the third kid who was abducted. In Las Vegas, Mr. Todd types on his computer. A red box where he types gradually turns red and seems to indicate something to him. He exits out of the red box and retrieves a large envelope with a dot on the cover from a nearby cabinet, maybe a safe, I'm not sure. He holds it with a handkerchief or a tissue and puts it on his desk and starts typing again and is distracted some by the folder for a while. Who gives Todd his orders? Are there more envelopes like this? And who else is scheduled, to have these envelopes? At the house where Dougie's car exploded, police are investigating the crime scene. One officer finds the car's plate on the roof of the house where the drugged-out mother and her son live. Inside, the mother again sits at her table and yells out, 119! And the officer calls out the license to another officer across the street as the destroyed car is put on a flatbed for transportation. At a motel, a bald little person listed in the credits as Ike the Spike Stadler rolls dice and writes down the results on a notepad. Time after time. And then an envelope with the dot on the cover is slid under his door. Inside are photos of Dougie and the woman who gave the two hitmen the job to kill Dougie. As a hip-hop song starts playing, he examines the photos and traces their faces with a large ice pick, which I guess gives him his nickname, the Spike. Then he stabs the ice pick into both photos one at a time. So I'm guessing the Spike is an assassin. At Lucky 7 Insurance, Cooper rides the elevator happily with his coffee. His co-worker from before, who brought coffee, leads him into the office. And there he's immediately brought into his boss's office, while Anthony Sinclair watches nervously from his own office across the hall. His boss examines the case files that Cooper worked on, and at first he thinks that Cooper's notes are childish scribbles. He thinks Dougie may need professional help, which, regardless of what happens, I'm thinking yes on that one. Cooper looks at the boxing poster behind his boss's desk and holds up a fist like the boxer. He seems to realize that his boss is the boxer on the poster. After continuing to examine the files, his boss starts comparing notes in various files until he realizes that they mean something. And he thanks Cooper and says for him to keep the info to himself, and that it's disturbing and he'll take it from here, but he may need Dougie's help later. That Dougie has given him a lot to think about. And he tries to shake Cooper's hand, which Cooper doesn't understand, but sort of imitates. His boss has mostly dismissed Dougie up to this point, but when he puts the pieces together in the files, he becomes much friendlier with Cooper. And the files apparently contain some very suspicious information about what Anthony Sinclair has been up to. So apparently Cooper calling Sinclair a liar was correct. Janie E. meets two men in the park, one of them played by Jeremy Davies from Lost and Hannibal and several other places. She learns that Dougie borrowed $20,000 3 weeks ago, and now with interest he owes them $52,000 back. The very tough Janie E. tells them that she'll pay them 25% interest on the loan, which comes up to $25,000. She complains again before she gives them the money and leaves, and the men agree that she's a tough dame. And she is a tough dame. She was very firm in her insistence that she was only paying them $25,000 and not the $52,000 that they wanted. And they seemed to be totally overwhelmed by her and didn't dispute it when she gave them the money and left. In an office, the woman who hired the two hitmen to kill Dougie gets the news that Dougie's body wasn't among those in the explosion of the car. She's shocked to hear a woman scream outside, and at the same time, the same hip-hop song from before starts playing, and the bald midget runs in screaming, carrying his ice pick, and he stabs her to death. He sees another woman coming across the scene and goes after her and apparently kills her off screen, and he emerges with his ice pick bent, which seems to break him up a lot more than having just murdered 2 people, maybe 3 people. Who was Todd's boss that I'm guessing got him to send the file to the Spike? Whoever ordered the murders apparently is not satisfied with the woman's work to kill Dougie, which, of course, who would be, because Dougie's, or who they presume is Dougie, is still around. The Spike is extremely violent, as seen in the very bloody murders that he committed. Richard drives into a clearing. He stops and cleans the boy's blood from the truck's grill and drives away, and he seems pretty blasé about the whole thing, more concerned with getting caught than the fact that he killed a kid. At the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department, Hawk washes his hands in the bathroom. A coin falls out of his pocket and rolls into a stall. He retrieves it, seeing that it's an Indian head coin, and looks around the stall and sees that it was built by Nez Perce Manufacturing. His investigation leads him to see a rivet or two missing from the top of the stall's door, and he gets tools to pull back the panel on the door. Chad comes in, sees him, and is surprised to see what he's doing, and Hawk tells him to use the ladies' restroom. Chad tells him he's tattling on him to the sheriff, which doesn't bother Hawk in the least. Hawk pulls the panel off the door and finds some folded notes, which seem to be from a diary or a small notebook. Is this what the log lady was talking about when he said that something from Hawk's heritage would lead him to discover whatever was missing with Agent Cooper, I'm guessing. Chad seems like a really serious asshole, threatening to tattle on Hawk to Sheriff Truman. Of course, we had already seen that Chad is somehow involved with Richard Horne, and we now know that Richard Horne is involved with the drug business going into Twin Peaks, so we could pretty safely make that assumption of Chad already. Hawk and everyone else seems pretty sure that Chad is a piece of shit. What were the papers that Hawk found? Were they pages of a diary? Were they pages from Laura Palmer's diary? Could these be the pages where Laura recorded Annie's message about being in the lodge with the Good Dale, which she told Laura to write in her diary? And of course, we never heard anything about this in the original series because it was something that I'm guessing they didn't write into the story until the movie, which was made after the cancellation of the original series. But the question is, how did they get into the bathroom stall door? That's the major question there. In the squad room, Doris yells at Frank that her father's car isn't fixed, like Frank promised it would be. Frank says her father probably left the parking brake on the car, and that's why he couldn't get it to go anywhere. And as the deputies watch, Chad is amused by the scene. Maggie chastises him, saying that Doris wasn't always like this, but has been since hers and Frank's son committed suicide. Chad mocks it while saying he couldn't take being a soldier. And obviously angry Maggie says nothing and goes back to work. Chad mocked Frank's son committing suicide. So, yeah, I'm guessing he's a complete and total shitbag. If Frank had heard him in that moment, what would he have done? I like to think he would have beat holy fuck out of Chad. I really want to see someone beat the shit out of Chad. And if they find out he's involved with Richard Horne and the drug business and Red, I may just get my wish on that one. At the Bang Bang Bar, Sharon Van Etten plays, and the credits roll. And that was my recap and theorizing about Twin Peaks: The Return, Episode 6. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.